Hello, everybody. Today we are diving into a critical period in the history of the Ottoman Empire, the Tanzimat Reforms. These were sweeping changes that attempted to modernize and reform the empire, which had earned the unfortunate nickname the Sick Man of Europe. But what were these reforms? Why did the Ottoman Empire need them? And did they succeed in curing the empire's illness? Or were they too little, too late? Let's find out. By the early 19th century, the Ottoman Empire had fallen behind the rapidly modernizing states of Europe. It was dealing with territorial losses, internal rebellions, economic problems, and military defeats. The empire was no longer the unstoppable force it had been in the earlier centuries. European powers, particularly Russia, Austria, and Britain, saw the Ottomans as decaying empire and began referring to it as the sick man of Europe. The Tanzimat reforms were introduced to reverse this decline. The term Tanzimat means reorganization in Arabic, and that's exactly what the reforms aimed to do. To reorganize the empire's administration, military, economy, and society. They were a series of edicts and laws introduced between 1839 and 1876, designed to modernize the Ottoman state and prevent further disintegration. The primary architects of these reforms were Ottoman leaders such as Sultan Abdülmecid I and reform-minded bureaucrats like Mustafa Reşit Pasha. The Tanzimat reforms were officially launched with the Hatti Sharif of Gülne in 1839. This royal decree outlined the empire's goals for reform and promised to protect the rights of all citizens, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. The edict guaranteed certain basic rights, the protection of life, property, and honor for all Ottoman subjects. It also emphasized the need for a more equal system of taxation and the reform of military conscription. One of the most significant aspects of the Tanzimat reforms was the attempt to create a more egalitarian society. Before this, the Ottoman Empire had been governed by the millet system, where religious minorities like Christians and Jews were allowed to govern themselves in return for paying extra taxes. The Tanzimat aimed to reduce these religious divisions and promote a more inclusive idea of Ottoman citizenship. In theory, this would help strengthen the empire by uniting its diverse population under one set of laws. The reforms also sought to modernize the economy. This was critical for an empire that had fallen behind Europe economically. The Tanzimat reforms introduced new legal frameworks that aimed to protect property rights and encourage foreign investment. Additionally, the empire tried to modernize its tax system. In the past, taxes were often collected by corrupt local officials who would keep a portion of the money for themselves. The Tanzimat introduced more direct state-controlled taxation to combat this corruption. But perhaps the most critical part of the Tanzimat reforms was the military modernization. The Ottoman military had suffered numerous defeats at the hands of European powers, and it was clear that their army needed serious reform. The Tanzimat reforms aimed to create a more modern, disciplined, and professional military. The empire introduced the new European-style uniforms, weapons, and training. Conscription was also made more systematic, attempting to ensure that the burden of military service was shared more equally across the empire's population. Despite these efforts, the Tanzimat reforms faced significant challenges. Many of the empire's conservative elites, particularly their religious leaders and local notables, resisted the changes. They felt that the reforms undermined traditional Islamic values and threatened their power. Furthermore, some minority groups were suspicious of the Tanzimat, fearing that these reforms were more about consolidating state power than genuinely improving their rights. Internationally, the reforms did help improve the Ottoman Empire's image, particularly with European powers, but the empire still struggled with territorial losses. The Crimean War in 1853 to 1856 For example, while ultimately a victory for the Ottomans, with the help of Britain and France, further highlighted the empire's dependence on foreign powers for survival. By the late 19th century, it became clear that the Tanzimat reforms were not enough to fully cure the sick man of Europe. The reforms had brought some modernization, but they had failed to fundamentally strengthen the empire. Corruption remained rampant, and the empire's economy and military were still fragile. By 1876, the Tanzimat reforms came to an end, as the Ottoman Empire plunged into a new period of crisis, culminating in Young Turk Revolution, further reforms, and eventual collapse.